Hello friends, welcome back to my channel Code with Infinite. In the previous lesson, we have seen what is HTML, why is HTML required, what are tags and elements in HTML and their types. If you have missed my previous lesson, you will get the link to it in the description below or in the I button. In this lesson, we'll learn about different other kind of tags such as input, div, label and their uses. Following which we'll understand what are attributes of a tag and why are the attributes required for a tag and their types. By the end of this lesson, you'll have a better understanding of these tags and attributes and their uses. So without a further ado, let's get started. We will begin by understanding how input tag works. This tag is essential when building a form or receiving input from user. So to understand the practical working of input tag, let's create a folder form element and open this folder with VS Code. On this folder, let us create a HTML file named as inputdemo.html and we'll have the basic structure of HTML with the extension that we have and get rid of extra codes. Okay. To understand the learning of input tag, we have to write the input tag. For that, write input as a tag. So this is an input tag. So you have just given a tag, right, which is an input tag. Now just go to your browser and check how it appears in your browser. So for that, what you have to do is right click in your file and open with live server. So when you do open with live server, the page will get rendered in your browser. So you get a text field there over where you can type in any text. So with this input tag, you get a box in your browser by on which you can type any text or any of the numbers. Fine. So there is attributes that is associated with the tags. What are attributes? By attributes, you can control the behavior of your tag. For an example, as of now, there is no attribute on this input tag, but you can provide several attributes. For an example, there is an attribute called as type. So when you give type, you have several type of attributes as you can see. So first I'll go with type equal to text. So when you give text and you go back to your browser, you see that there is no changes. You get the same thing that you got earlier, which means that by default the input tag, its attribute that is type is holding value is of text. Now there is another value that you can provide to it, to your type attribute, that is email or say number. So when you give number, you go to browser and see what is the difference. Now over here you cannot type any text, but is what you can just type in numbers, or you can use this up and down arrow to increase or decrease the value of the numbers. So you understood, right? By the attributes, we control the behavior. And how we are controlling the behavior? Because if I have given a type equal to text, I was able to type in the text and the numbers. But when I give the type equal to number, you are only able to type in a number and not a text. So by this, you control the behavior of your tags, like how it should function. So there are other attributes, we'll explore that later. First, let's focus on this tag. So we provide input type equal to text, the default one. So in the browser, when we go and check, we can type in the text and numbers. Well and good. But if you provide to user such kind of input field and you don't provide information to the user, how will the user understand like
what he has to or she has to enter over there. So there has to be some information to guide user, to let them know like what they have to enter there. For example, I'm creating this field for username. So for that, to provide an guidance to user, there is an other attribute to this input field that is called as placeholder. And to this placeholder, you can provide a value to it. For an example, I'll provide enter username. So when you do this, so whatever the data that you have provided in a placeholder will get rendered over here now. So this now gives user a meaningful information that on this box, the username has to be entered. So first attribute that we have seen is type. The next attribute that we have seen is a placeholder. This is a field that is username. You always put inside a form, right? So when you create such kind of input field to be a part of a form, there is an extra tag that is going to be used, that is widely used, that is called as label. And what is the use of this label? Let's check that. The tag is label, and in this label you can provide any data between the opening tag and the closing tag. For example, I'll provide username. So let's go to browser and check how it appears. So what you get is you get username as a bold, and then you get a text box where the user can enter the name. So this field or this tag, that is label, that is used with the input tag to provide more information to the user for that field. Like this field is for what? It is for username. Now, when you create different type of field in your form, there'll be username, there'll be password, right? So this is a field for username. Now let's create a field for password. So we'll copy this and paste it. We'll change the label as password, and we'll change the placeholder as password. Go back to browser and check how it appears. Now you see that you get a field as username and you get a field as password, but they both are aligned in a same line, right? But what we want is, we don't want in this manner. We want it to be in a block label. Like we'll have username, below that we'll have a password. So for that, we'll do the grouping of our input and label. So for grouping of your form element, there is a tag that is called as a block tag. And what is a block tag? Block tag is a tag which will always start on a new line. So there is a tag that is used to group your input elements, that is called as div. So the label and input will put it inside div. This also will put it inside div. Cool. Now go back to browser and check. So now what you get is, you get username and password one after other, right? So this is how we create the input field. Now there is one issue with this. What is that? You go back to browser, you type in username, say as infinite, and the password as infinite. Now the thing is, you are able to see the password, right? But at many places you see that whenever you type in password, you are unable to see it, right? Because they are masked. That you will see it in form of asterisk asterisk, right? So we want our password field to be like that. So for that, we'll change the type of our password field from text to password. Let's go back to browser and check. Enter the username. Now enter the password. This time when you enter the password, your password is masked and you are not getting the password as what you type. Instead of that, you are getting as asterisk asterisk asterisk, which is a good practice to follow. Now the next thing is, whenever you are using this label, there is an attribute associated with this label that you must use. And why you should use, to understand that, go to browser and click on username. Is anything happening? No. When we click on password, is it anything happening? No, right? But there is an attribute with label that you can use to make that label, which is username being displayed in your browser, to work in a different way. What is that? Let's go and check. So the attribute is for. This for attribute is present with your label. So to for attribute, you will give a name to it. So I can give any value. So for an example, I will give it as username because it is for username label. Now this label has to be binded with this input field. For that, there is an attribute with input field that is called as ID. And the value of this ID should be same as what you have given in for the label. So for we have given the value as username. So we'll copy this and paste it over here. Now when you make this value that is given as username of ID attribute of your input tag same as the value of your for attribute of label, what happens in your browser? Why we are doing this? To understand that, let's go back to your browser and click on now on username. When you click on username, just notice over here, automatically there will be a cursor that will come up to this text field. There you go, right? So you are binding your label with your input field. That makes more sense of writing this label. Now same we can do for our password field. So for we can give as password and the ID attribute for it as password. Go back to browser and check. When you click on password, you get a cursor over here directly where you can type in your password. Well and good. Now there is two things to follow up over here. First is the ID attribute. Whatever the value that you give in your ID attribute, it has to be the unique throughout your HTML page. The second is the attributes that we are using, such as for. So this for attribute is only present with your label tag. It's not like there is an attribute that is present with a tag. It can be present with all other tag. For an example, this for attribute will not be available with your input tag. So you don't get an option for attribute over here. So the attributes are only available with their associated tags. It's not like it will be available with all the tags. So it is unique to that tag. Next is the input type that we are using as text, right? There are different type of value that you can provide. Like we have provided as text password, there are some other values that you can provide. What are those? Let's go and explore. What we'll do is we'll change over here. So we'll make it to email. Now, when you make it to email, you are enforcing user that they should enter some email. For an example, let me write infinite. So it gives you a message, right? Please include at the rate in email address because the email address will have at the rate. So that whenever you want to take you input from user as an email, you must use the type as email so that you can enforce user to enter only the email ID and not a invalid email ID. So you should not accept the email ID which is not having at the rate. The next type that we are going to see is date. So whenever you want to take date input from user, for example, you want to take the date of birth of the user. So you will provide the type as date. Now, when you provide a type as date, when you get this field as this, where user will get a calendar to select for date. That is pretty good, right? Now the next type is number. So this can be used to collect age from the user, where user can make use of this up and down arrow to enter their age, or also it can be used to gather the mobile number of the users, because the user will only be able to enter the numbers and not the text, because text will not be a valid phone number. So it's like according to what type of data that you want to take from user, you will provide the value of your type. So it can be either a password, email, number, date for date of birth, right? Okay. Now say you want to take a file from user. You want that a user should be able to upload a file. For example, the user should be able to upload a resume, which is in a doc or a PPT file. For that, the type will change to file. Go back to your browser. Now it appears as this, where user can click on this button choose file to choose any of their file from their system. Next attribute that we are going to learn about is called as maxlength. For that, what we'll do is we'll create another field same as this, but it will be to a company. ID will be company, type will be text, placeholder can be enter company. Now let's go back to the browser and check. So we get a field for company. Let's change the label. We get a field for company where user can type their company name. Well and good. But now what we want is we want to restrict the number of text that the user can input there to say 5. So it can have or it can take data from user to a maximum length of 5. For this, there is an attribute that can be used which is called as maxlength. So we have given the max length as 5. Now let's go back to the browser and check. This is 5 character that I have already put in. Now I'm trying to give a 6th one, but you are unable to input it. So because you have given the max length as 5, it has restricted the number of input the user can put in there. So this is about max length. Next attribute is the reverse of it, which is mean length. So we give mean length as 3, which means that at least there should be 3 character in your text field. Let's go back to browser and input 1, 2. Okay. Now let's just hover over it. What you see is there is an error message that is coming up, or a info message or a hint that is coming up. Please lengthen this text to 3 character or more. You are currently using 2 characters. So this is the use of mean length. So if I provide more text, the error message will disappear. Next attribute that we are going to see is called as size. So we have given size equal to 3. So what this size does, it reduces the width of your field area. Like if you have given the size as 3, go to browser and check. The field area has decreased to a size of 3. It's not like it will take only 3 characters. It's like it has been reduced to 3. So if I input any number of character, it's well and good. But it has the length of that box has reduced to 3. But this attribute behaves in a different manner when we apply in different tags. For example, in input field it appears, or in input tag it behaves in this way like we have seen. But there are different tags where we apply this attribute and its behavior will change. So it's not like a attribute will behave in the same behavior you apply on different tags. That we'll see later when we see a tag that is called as select. Next attribute that we'll see is called as value. Let's remove this size and use value attribute. So to this value, what you can do is you can provide some default value to it. For example, this field is for a company name. So if a company is giving this form to their employee, the username password will change, but the company will remain same, right? So why they want to take the input from user? Instead of that, you can provide a default value to it. For example, I can provide a default value as company XYZ. But now, if you just go to browser and check, we haven't provided any value, how the things appear. You get a placeholder. Now, apply some value to it. So XYZ, go back to browser and check. There you go. So you have the default value there, which you have provided in your company input field tag. So can you change this default value? Yes, you can change it. I can change it to any of the random value. I hope now you have got a better understanding of the attribute, like how it is controlling the behavior. Attributes such as max length, min length, size, value. One thing to observe over here is with HTML, what we are doing is we are able to create the structure of the page or a form, right? So we have a username, password, company where we can take the data from the user. But can you apply some color to it? Like I want username to be yellow or blue. No, you cannot do that with HTML. So for that, CSS is required. Okay. Next is if the user is entering some value to it, or if the user is not entering any value to username, are you able to validate it whether it's correct or not, whether it has made the criteria or not? Like the username should contain a alphabet or a digit that you normally see in day-to-day forms, right? So those validation also you're not able to do, right? Because you're not having the hold of the data of the user. You are just giving user to input the data, but the data what is entered by the user, you don't have a hold of that. So once you don't have a hold of it, you cannot validate that data, or you cannot do anything with that data. So to have a hold of that data and to validate that data, JavaScript is used. So HTML is just used to gather the input from the user. CSS will be used to apply the styling, to make it beautiful, to apply it beautification to your structure or your web page. And JavaScript will be used to have a hold of your data that is being entered by the user and validate it, save it to the database, validate the user for login to your application. So that's all for this tutorial. I hope it's clear to you now, like what is HTML and what you can do with HTML, right? In the next video, we'll see a detailed study about several other tags and their attributes which are related to your forms.
Woohoo! That was a great day of learning, wasn't it? If you enjoyed the content, I would kindly ask you to give me a like and subscribe to my channel. I would be mighty, mighty grateful. See you in the next video.